All right, we're good?
Cool. All right, welcome everybody. Cool. So a lot going on in the crypto world as usual. Welcome almost back to $12,000 per Bitcoin. It's been, I think, would you officially call us out of the bear market?
I think we've got to bounce back.
We got a bit of a bounce back.
We got up almost to 14 the other day, and the thing that made me nervous watching all of this is it just started to do that really big ramp really quickly again. I'm like, okay, so this is not, like, at what point is it going to turn around and bottom out? And it did to 10 something, but now we're pushing 12 right now. It's saying 11.
As we speak, I'm showing a global average, or at least I think there's maybe a Bitstamp rate of 11,930 maybe in the next half hour before we finish this live recording. We could be back at 12. But a lot of questions are, well, what's causing it? And admittedly, if you look at the graph of kind of the price of Bitcoin relative to how it did in 2013 when it ramped up, or how it did in 2017 when it ramped up, it's a little odd. It seems almost a bit too soon relative to the downtrend. Didn't make that kind of like clean kind of curve down and then clean curve back up. It just out of nowhere.
Well, it took off because I've started paying attention and holding again, and watching it just over the past couple weeks, and we're like, whoa, wait a minute, this went, because what was it, a month ago we were still down in the fives.
Right, just a month ago, beginning of May, I think. I tweeted out, that Barry Silbert had bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin just to ramp up the price going right into his conference. The DCG's a major owner, if not full stakeholder in CoinDesk, which runs Consensus in New York, and it's if not the biggest event in crypto. And pretty much right at the start of that conference, the price spiked. I think it went from like 6 to 8. And so. Joking aside, it definitely has been a hell of a somewhat bull run recovery. We're still not at all-time highs, and I predict that things will get really stupid as soon as we cross that $19,000 barrier. Yeah, and then media starts really covering it.
Yeah, I was thinking once it hits 20, but I was thinking, what would be sane is it slowly inches, not this like what it did on the last big ramp up where it was going up $1,000 a day.
Well, realize $1,000 a day won't mean much.
Yeah.
in about, in 3 months, we keep at this rate, $1,000 it becomes less than 10% up.
Right.
And it starts actually needing to go higher, and it starts looking even more stupid. And so the big question is like, what's kind of different about this cycle compared to like 2017, maybe even like 2013,
Well, I read some articles getting prepared for today that they're talking about Bitcoin's being searched more than some other popular benchmarks like Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, the biggest celebrities of our time. And
so,
admittedly, the biggest celebrities of our time are still only appealing to some demographic of people. But money kind of appeals to everyone.
Pretty much does, yes.
It pretty much does to everyone, at least to some degree, at least some aspect of, you at least need as much as you like to live. But it's one thing I had noticed, at least, in this ramp up, is that we never went through a phase of Bitcoin being this kind of evil, totally dead type of rhetoric. That rhetoric never came around. And it did very heavily in 2015, 2016, where Bitcoin was a bad word, cryptocurrencies even were a bad word. It was all about blockchain, but we never kind of hit that rhetoric. And I'm predicting, or at least feeling like that's causing the quicker ramp up, is there wasn't as much of the hammering down on it as if it was dead.
Well, the hammering down, I think,
it was just
a lot
a
of
correction
that.
almost.
In the last ramp up, a lot of that hammering down was people were just becoming more aware. I mean, we were seeing that awareness spike, and now the article I was reading, it was like 57% of Americans have at least heard of Bitcoin.
Yeah, huge survey. I'm not sure how many people they had surveyed, but yeah, 57, 58%. That is huge.
Yeah, and so when you get that kind of an awareness, but they also. We know from 2 years ago with people, this is dead, this is not working. Well, it's still here.
Oh, it's totally
so if they're going to, you really can't rehash those same things saying, well, it's dead. Yeah, it crashed, but it came back up.
Right.
So you
especially with how quick it's kind of recovered.
Yeah, you remove that from the equation. It's like, okay, well, yeah, this could be here for a while. So then now that we have the awareness and the spikes, we have the fee dilemma.
The fee dilemma, going into the next topic, and definitely as this is our live Q&A, and you guys are definitely welcome to go ahead and send over comments. We're on Twitter, Periscope on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. One of the questions, I guess you could say, or complaints that's been definitely coming through our path, especially on our support team, has been about the fees and long transaction delays and times and whatnot. And it's somewhat of a reality. That's just part of, right now, the Bitcoin network until we're able to solve aspects of scalability. But looking today, right now, it looks like using the bitcoinfees.earn.com website, it costs about 220 Satoshis per byte to send a transaction to get it roughly, and once again, this is never fully accurate because Bitcoin and transactions and when they confirm is somewhat like a lottery. It's just playing the odds. But to have good odds of getting a transaction confirmed in about 3 blocks, so that's about 30, 40 minutes, costs 220 Satoshis per byte. Now, many of you are like,
What does that mean?
what exactly does that mean? Satoshis per byte. Well, every time I went to my bank and they charged me a fee, I never heard of the term.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And so each transaction in Bitcoin sends data. Right? It's like you're just sending a packet of data on the network, and the transaction's data is measured in bytes. You've probably heard of bits and bytes, kilobytes, megabytes. And each transaction, on average, takes 200 to 300 bytes of data. It can take much more. It can take a kilobyte of data, but on average about 220, 240, 250 bytes. And if you do the math, a Satoshi is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin. It's the smallest unit of Bitcoin. So you do the math, 200 times 225, you're looking at about 40,000-ish Satoshis, which is 0.0004 Bitcoin. And times about $12,000, we're looking at about $5 to send kind of the average transaction to get it confirmed within approximately 3 blocks, so about 30 to 40 minutes. Obviously, if you're willing to wait longer, that price can go down. If you want it sooner, that price can go
Way up.
can go way up. And that's just kind of life in this kind of cryptocurrency world, especially for Bitcoin and related currencies. And yes, I've sent some transactions over the past few days, and I'm seeing sometimes $8 fees to send $1.
Well, and so back to the arguments about how useful is this, as it scales and gets more and more
And
awareness.
we hit 12,000. Sorry to interrupt.
Uh,
Sorry.
well,
It's the problem with being a Bitcoin. You got a price ticker on every single screen
well,
in your life.
You're on a different one. I'm at 11,979. Oh, no,
Oh,
no 12,089.
there you go.
There we go.
There you
My
go.
ticker caught up.
Anyway, you were saying.
Just as a crypto skeptic arguments, like, okay, how usable is this thing if I want to spend $1 and it's going to cost me $5, where my credit card is the 3% fee or whatever? Like, do you see down the road some way of stabilizing a fee structure that makes sense?
Yeah, so in the current era, I think we're in a current era of just pure speculation where if you're sending money over with Bitcoin, you're sending fairly large amounts. And these fees are at least more negligible. They're not negligible, but they're more negligible. You're sending $500, $1,000, $5,000. As we've repeated over and over again on this show, we've paid everybody at Edge in Bitcoin since day one. And sometimes that hurt because the fees were high, and it hurt because transaction times were long, but sometimes it had gone down. So we've kind of bared the roller coaster. Now, as a transactional currency, yes, no, I don't think that Bitcoin, at least not today, functions as a transactional currency. But I'm going to state something a little controversial in that, a lot of people feel it doesn't need to.
Yep.
It doesn't need to. It can just be a store of value. It can be digital gold. That's commonly used. The Bitcoin standard versus the gold standard is frequently talked about. But I have a strong theory that any cryptocurrency cannot survive as purely a store of value. And that's, I think, pretty controversial, especially in the kind of Bitcoin maximalist space. And I feel that way because if you look back at what makes something a store of value such as gold, it became a store of value because it couldn't become a payment method after a certain point in time. So it started off as a payment method. It was the payment method.
Yeah.
And it got pushed into the background and became custodially held, and then paper became the payment method. Debt became the payment method. But you needed something to back that payment method,
Right.
Which was the gold. So the gold backed the payment method and effectively became the store of value because the payment method itself of like paper, whatnot, was required significantly more trust. And so unless Bitcoin figures out its scalability issue, whether Lightning kind of works out in the end or some aspect of bigger blocks and better signature formats and smaller transaction sizes, whatever it might be, unless it figures that out, I predict that it won't survive as a store of value because it won't achieve its goals. You know, the original goals it was meant to achieve, because it will end up becoming just like what gold did, and we'll need another payment mechanism on top of it, which will have all of the same problems as gold.
Right.
You know, and true, gold survived, and it's, you know, an $8 trillion market cap, but it doesn't accomplish any of the goals that Bitcoin was set out to do. So not that it won't survive, not that Bitcoin won't survive, I should probably rephrase that. It will survive, but it won't succeed at any of the ideals laid out in the white paper of what it was trying to achieve. Meaning, will it be a way for anyone, anywhere in the world to transact without any borders, permissionless, censorship resistant? If it becomes just a store of value and there are payment mechanisms layered on top of it, just like we layered on top of gold, then there comes the censorship, there come the borders,
Right.
There comes the permission required in order to access this global economy.
Well, given, like, I don't disagree with you there. What I see happening, at least I think is going to happen at some point, we're going to get a currency that's going to achieve what it wanted in the white paper. Bitcoin's first. It's the, you know, it's the big gorilla in the room, but it's not, you know, my ideals for cryptocurrency has always been, and I've said it on here before, I want to use it.
Right, exactly.
And, you know,
we've been big use guys since day one, you know.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say this, but the darn business directory that just keeps haunting us that we built years ago, people still mention how they loved it, and that was in the era that we wanted people to actually use cryptocurrency.
Which I think we still want them to use it. It's just, it's not going to be Bitcoin. It's going to be some other currency that becomes the fast transact. And I'm looking for what that's going to be. I mean, it's great to watch the Bitcoin price rise, and
Right.
you know, like Litecoin's up now, I guess, because the halving is coming up.
It's going up, yep.
So,
And it's interesting to think that the Bitcoin halving is still quite a ways from now, a year out, yet we're already seeing a price rise.
yep.
And normally we would see a price rise almost starting at the halving, going into the following year. So where will we be by the time of the halving? At this rate, we'll be crashing. You know, if we continue the price rise as it's been over the past 2 months, we will have already gone past our like 10x from previous all-time highs.
Right.
And potentially already be on our way down in the midst of a halving, which is unheard of. Like, we've never had a...
Or the halving. Well, do you think the halving might stabilize that out a little bit, though?
I mean, it generally doesn't. So historically it doesn't, and on an economic sense, why should it? Supply and demand, basics of economics. So either we're going to have to slow down this ramp up, which we've never seen a curve that looked like that. If you look at any of the bull cycles that crypto has had, it never kind of does this, and then does that, and then does that again.
Yeah.
Right? It kind of does this, then down, and this, and down, at actually kind of nice-looking waves. Pretty even waves, upward.
Nice looking waves if you get in on the bottom.
If you're a wave kind of guy, right? You know, nice looking waves, but it's never kind of like done this exponential up and then curve slower
Yeah.
up. You know, so this is going to be an interesting cycle. I don't think we've seen something like this in the entire kind of charting history of Bitcoin, but hopefully people can kind of handle obviously the ramifications of these price hikes, which also incur the fee hikes, which also kind of reduce the utility of crypto. And one of those utilities is just buying and selling it. People disregard the fact that in order for you to buy and sell crypto,
You have
many
to have
people, you might have to be able to send it and receive it, and that costs money. Now, granted, yes, there's the traders that just keep money on exchange. They never pull it out of the exchange, and we all know there's good and bad to doing that, definitely a lot of bad. But
Especially in the past week.
12,200. It's going up again. Here we go. I'm going to take a quick break here to log into my... Just kidding.
Well, I
but-
mean, we've gone up $500 since we've been talking, and I think a lot of that is the fact that
that we're talking.
Paul and I are
That's it.
live.
We're influencing. Influencing.
Buy
and
now.
So what will be interesting to see is how that affects people's ability to acquire and trade the currency itself. People underestimate how much crypto is influenced by not just the big exchanges, but actual cash-to-cash trading. You know, and people look at the price on the exchanges and the cash-to-cash trade, but then some of them will go and buy back what they trade on the exchanges. But if they're hindered in their ability to trade the crypto, what kind of impact will that have? Like, will we see fees go up to like $100? And will that slow things down a bit?
I think it would slow it down because I'm not going to pay $100 to trade. You know, which
It definitely is a little painful,
Yeah,
for sure,
I mean,
especially for for people that unfortunately don't have access to some of the largest exchanges, centralized exchanges in the world, where their only mechanism for trading is peer-to-peer.
Yep.
If you're in Venezuela, you have zero access to a centralized exchange where you can just do a deposit and then buy and sell and try to ride this wave. You're pretty much on the street and buying and selling with bolivars as best you possibly could. So, granted, they're a small portion of our total volume because, well, their money isn't worth so much. But it is definitely an impact on the utility, and the utility right now is speculation. But the concept of the price spike, what's causing it, the fact that Americans are now much more aware, and it's probably a global thing, not just Americans, but also relative to the previous price spike, it's much more accessible. Like the tooling is much more baked out. There's a lot of options for people, different payment mechanisms. One question that came up to us, or at least the awareness that came up to us, one of the biggest financial services companies or fintech companies is Square.
Yep.
And they've got Cash App, which lets you buy Bitcoin. But before, I think just this week, they wouldn't let you deposit Bitcoin into the app. They don't let you buy and withdraw. So they weren't kind of a good usable tool for like sending and receiving. But they just announced that now you can actually deposit and withdraw. Woohoo! All right, great. They're like now up to 2012 standards. But the interesting thing about Cash App is that they kind of fall under the entire custodial kind of world. Right?
Yep.
Like they hold your money, send and receive, and there was recent, I don't want to call it guidance, but basically a new plan put out by the Financial Action Task Force,
Yep.
FATF. This came out just earlier this week, or I think last week, which is strong recommendation and probably will be enforced that financial intermediaries, specifically exchanges, well, not specifically, but for example, exchanges, will have to behave kind of like banks in the way they transmit user info. Collect, but not just collect, not just KYC users, but actually have to transmit the personal information of their users when making a transaction.
Well, that's making a transaction from one institution like that to another.
To another one.
So that for our wallet holders,
It simply doesn't apply.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And if they tried, so the interesting thing is, someone might say, well, what if they make it apply? And they say you're just forced to do it. Even if they did say that, it wouldn't stop the general utility of a non-custodial app, because literally a user could just download some code on their computer and send out some money. Who are you going to have enforce the fact that they sent some money? And how are you going to enforce them attaching their personal information to that transaction? Right? This is what FATF is basically stating, is that with every outgoing transaction, you will have to include who is sending the money, their name, their government ID number, their address, and the equivalent of the recipient. So the recipient, who is the person, who is the financial service that's receiving it, and their government ID number. How are you going to do that with an open blockchain? Right? You just simply can't enforce it.
Yeah.
And while there's some companies that what I call help facilitate that via software, such as us and dozens of other wallets in the industry, how do you do it where you know it's actually going to happen? Because anyone could just literally download the software. I mean, someone could compile our code, compile many different open source wallet software code bases, and then just send a transaction. But what it definitely is going to do is it's going to hinder, at least dampen, the utility of any custodial service. Can you then become a wallet for transactional purposes outside of just exchange services? And so Square Cash App was designed as an app initially not for buying and selling and trading anything. It was to be able to send money to your friends.
Yep.
And if it incorporates Bitcoin, sure, you might be able to do that from the viewpoint of Cash App to Cash App. But good luck being able to do that from Cash App to, Bread Wallet, Edge, MyEther Wallet. Almost certainly won't be able to work. And that's where I think we're seeing the true transition to realize how valuable it is to stay non-custodial.
Yep. That's one of the reasons I love our wallet. Just, the whole wanting to know everything. And I know this is not Bitcoin related, but it still has to do with that constant tracking. I came back to the States on my last trip, and I had to make a deposit in my wife's bank account, and it was the tips she'd earned in cash and whatnot, and I had to fill out forms because I'm not the account holder, and I was
That's
dropping
right.
off, and it was only $3,000 in cash.
Yeah, but it's cash.
And
Evil,
it's like,
evil, dirty fiat.
She's like,
Dirty cash.
Yeah, where did this money come from? And I mean, the inner sense of humor had a whole bunch of things that I wanted to blurt out, but I really needed to get the money in the bank. So it was
Just like, okay, great.
yeah, all right, fine. Here's the legit thing, but
Yep.
it's just that level of tracking is.
Well, the thing is, we think of it from our point of view in the U.S. It's like, it's privacy. Why are you tracking me? Blah blah blah. But realize that there's people. If you wanted to send from, say, an exchange account or a custodial wallet to someone that just doesn't even have the ability to have a bank account, even if they wanted to be tracked, they simply couldn't, and therefore they can't receive that money.
Yeah. That's
So there's
insane.
no institution that they could go to say, here's my identity so that I can go and receive some Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah.
That's actually, to me, one of the biggest issues is just the accessibility. There's the privacy issue for those of us that could use those services. And then there's the accessibility issue for those that simply don't have access to those services because, just the same way that banks aren't accessible all over the world, so are custodial solutions in crypto aren't accessible all over the world because they don't have to deal with the different regulations in each
Right,
location.
and that's one of the driving purposes behind this is to enable these financial transactions to happen for people that don't have access to those institutions.
Yep, exactly. So they're great services for now. It's a great way to speculate into crypto, but definitely see that there's going to be a significant drop in awareness of more of the custodial solutions once we enter that utility phase. Hopefully this giant price spike or fee spike isn't hindering that utility phase, but hopefully it lights a fire under the ass of the developers and the community to really, really, really put forth the solutions to scaling.
Yep.
It's because it definitely hurts. It's especially if you work in the space and you have to field the phone calls and answer the questions of why are things slow and inexpensive. But for now, obviously it's a great investment, right? It's a great investment. It's doing well. It puts enough smiles on people's faces versus the frowns from the fees that it's a net positive. So
Yep.
we'll ride the wave, and obviously does well for apps like ours where people can buy, sell, and trade. And so definitely if you're in the U.S. or many other countries, give it a try. Go get some Bitcoin, go get some other coins as well, and diversify a little bit. And I think that's running right up into our 12:30 timeline.
Wow, yeah.
Cool.
We only hit 2 topics.
Two major topics, though.
Yeah, no, the fees, especially, I mean, that's a big one for all of us out there.
Yep. Cool.
Especially with payday coming up.
Yeah, exactly. And now suddenly, payday means more than just getting paid. It also means having to pay fees.
Yep.
But so is it. So it is. Usually end off with some kind of update on events. So a couple of our team members just came back from Bitcoin 2019. Heard it was a great event. Good job to BTC Inc., David Bailey for throwing such an awesome event. And a lot of great speakers I heard. Wish I was able to attend, but I was kind of locked down here at home. However, we will be at a few other events later this year. We're shooting to be over at DevCon in Osaka, Japan later this year, as well as in World Crypto Conference. I'll be speaking at the World Crypto Con in Vegas. I did so last year, and I'll be there again this year.
Right on.
And tune in next Friday. We'll give you an update. We're looking at hitting up a few other events as well come August, and would love to be able to sync up with you guys in person and answer any questions you guys might have, actual face-to-face.
Yep, and just a little teaser, the next few releases are going to be pretty cool.
They'll be sweet.
Yeah, so
They'll be sweet.
keep an eye out.
Especially for all you people who are trying to get into crypto, the next few releases are going to be awesome. Great announcements coming up. So tune in next week. Hope to have one of those announcements mentioned on air.
Right on.
Cool.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you.